Healthcare is a human right. What did we learn about healthcare from the 2020 pandemic? Some of the issues that came to surface were not new to us. For example, the lack of healthcare for underserved communities. But who knew that a woman's reproductive health issue that began back in 1969 would be overturned? Now, a staggering majority of the United States will either restrict abortion access or ban it entirely. In some states, there will be no exceptions to these bans, even if the mother's life is in danger. So maybe the better question is, what didn't we learn about healthcare and healing from the 2020 pandemic? There are many issues ranging from cancer to mental health, which have been on the rise post-pandemic. Why did we, the people, have to face Roe v. Wade again now? Here today are three guests in the healthcare industry to discuss their renewed passions. Pandemic. To Diamond Bridges. I'm your host, Irene Diamond. Join me today as I feature three guests of the Gen X and Millennial generations. From an empowered place, my guests are invited to share how they utilize their successes to bring more truth and kind-heartedness to the world. Cheers. Kim has a driving passion to educate the world about sex and reproductive health, beginning with teenagers. Joy began as a peer educator when she was a teenager. And I know one of your goals presently is to make your work be as impactful to scores of people as possible, the success of which to reach the masses. John thrives on the novelty of the spectrum of life, involving himself purposefully in the care of underserved communities. I invite all three of you to participate in this discussion freely. So where do you think we stand? Should we be thinking globally or for America or both?
That's a good question. I think both, but I think we have to start with America. We have a lot of dysfunction here that is unfortunately increasing rather than decreasing. And I think we have to focus on that before we can focus elsewhere.
I agree wholeheartedly, Kimberly. My grandmother would say, sweep your stoop before you complain about the messiness of someone else's house. And so we need to get our act together here in America, and then we can have a conversation on the global stage. Not to say that we can't be part of what's happening globally in conversation, but as far as trying to direct, like we like to do, and tell other folks what to do, not until we get it cleaned up in the healthcare arena, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that other countries are probably laughing at us right now. I mean, not wholeheartedly, but I think other countries are better off with their healthcare systems than we are. But then, of course, there are plenty that are underserved. So, do women and men need to be educated about women's health care?
Yes, 1,000% yes.
I completely agree. As the only guy here, I feel like having gone through school and done my training, I learned, from textbooks and whatnot, but certainly going through the birthing process. And so fun fact, both of my kids were home birthed. So I've got quite the perspective. on that.
Good to see it up close and personal.
But you did.
It did. The doula was the best money spent.
Wow.
Hands down.
Cool.
Yeah, it takes two to tango. We all need to know what's happening with each other's bodies, quite frankly, and especially I would say in the childbirth and the preparation for childbirth, the pregnancy and postnatal periods.
Mm. Yeah, and the postpartum depression is something that's really been on the rise, or at least more awareness has been brought on that subject. So I'm hopeful that women are getting more treatment for postpartum mental health. What do you think the scenario looks like, Kim?
I think that it's kind of a combination of things. I think that the awareness is very important, and it's created a lot of exposure for people to begin to look for signs or have an understanding that I think culturally we brush a lot off when it comes to pregnancy and postpartum, and we just say, oh, it's just part of the process, or, oh, she's just dealing with postpartum, rather than actually addressing the very real issues that come along with pregnancy and postpartum. We have some really significant and fairly common complications that we experience with maternal health care in the United States that have been dismissed for a really long time. And so I think right now we're seeing a combination of people actually realizing that they do have these conditions that they didn't know they had. And then I think simultaneously, we're living in a modern society where people are lacking support on very significant levels. And so I think that also is contributing to a higher level of reporting of postpartum depression. But I think it's something that truly we've been dealing with for a long time, and we just didn't have the words or the ability to talk about it.
Yeah.
I would absolutely agree. I'm 54, my daughter's 25. And I remember, according to the textbooks, I would not say that I had postpartum depression. But I remember the talk around that time. Anything that was going on with us within that first year of having a baby, it was because we had just had a baby. Everything was just that, and everybody went through it, figure it out. I do distinctly recall, and Irene knows this, my pregnancy was fairly traumatic. I had toxemia, Kimberly. Well, you're a doctor, you know this. I had toxemia, and Vashti was born at 29 weeks gestation. It was traumatic, and I had to have an emergency C-section. And my depression, I use that word loosely, my depression was around not having a baby the normal way and feeling like a failure as a woman. That really took me out, and took me a while to kind of get my head around, you couldn't even push out a 2-pound, 2-ounce baby. What's wrong with you?
Right. But I think, Joy, that's such an important thing to bring up, because there is so much stigma around birthing the right way. And if you aren't the perfect birther, if you don't do it the way that society has deemed you're meant to do it, then there is a lot of pressure, and you do suddenly feel like a failure because you haven't had that like fairy tale childbirth, which by the way, none of us have. John, I'm sure you had 2 home births. I'm sure they weren't fairy tale. But there is this idea that people are meant to just have a perfect pregnancy, have a perfect postpartum, keep your mouth shut, you have a baby, you got what you wanted, where truly there is a lot of grieving that comes from birth, even if you do have the birth you wanted, because it's such an extreme experience and something that cannot be 100% amazing.
What's so interesting is even 25 years later, as I shared that with you all, I felt the shame flush. Like I felt that heat that you get in your face, and I felt a little bit weepy. Like there's still something there, as awesome as a mommy as I think that I am today. There is still something there about not doing it the real way.
Wow. Thank you for opening up about that. I mean, I wondered if it's just a general more awareness that, or if these symptoms have always been there. Like, are they just becoming more pronounced now because we're more aware of our feelings?
I think so. We had the tools to talk about it now. Back in the day, they used to do twilight birth. They would put women under, so they didn't have to experience childbirth. So they would do twilight birth, and then when they were experiencing postpartum hormone fluctuations, they would just put them on lithium. So for a long time, we've tried to erase the experience of birth and postpartum. And now there is, luckily a massive uprising saying, hey, we have to talk about this. Hey, we have to be real about this. We can't sugarcoat it. We can't pretend like it's what happens in the movies. And also the postpartum experience is very severe, even for people who feel nothing but joy. So
yeah, which was me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had complete joy in all of my birthing experiences. Yeah.
that's
I would love to hear it from John's perspective, especially
I was
having
just
had
going
your
to
two
ask,
babies at home.
tell
Oh my
us, John, like, was there a feeling of inadequacy on your part? Like, what you can't do, what can you do or can you not do?
I think in my situation, and one of the questions that I was going to ask you guys is like, because I was thinking systematically, like what Kimberly was talking about, how like birthing got kind of put inside the hospital and it's been there for generations. One of the thoughts going through my head was like, does that sort of make women, or you guys personally, did you feel like maybe a little powerless because you're inside of this whole system and process, and it's gonna go according to the algorithm of how birthing works in that situation? And we not to have a direct answer right away, but I think one of the things that I was really interested in, and I encouraged my wife at the time, was like, hey, your body can do this. It's designed for this. It's built for this. So,
You know what's interesting as part of this conversation that occurs to me on my dad's side, I'm first generation born in the hospital. So from my cultural experience, many of my friends' parents were born at home. And that was by, because they could not go to the hospital in the places where they were born because they were Black. Right. And so as you said that whole, there's still a great belief in the African-American culture, especially the older generations. As they get younger, it's a little bit different, that birthing belongs at home.
interesting.
And that putting it in the hospital makes it I don't want to say an illness, a sickness. When you said, Kimberly, about lithium, that was news to me. And as somebody who worked in mental health, that blew my hair back. That was the treatment for postpartum issues. It makes pregnancy something wrong and bad and something to be fixed, as opposed to the most natural thing ever.
Right.
John, I love that you use the word power, because I feel like in doula work, that's not all, but that's a big part of what we talk about, is like observing and honoring your power in the birth process. And I think, Joy, that's also what you were getting at. Like, having a birth at home is so empowering, and you don't have people dictating what your birth is meant to look like. You are birthing on your own terms. You are living in your body every moment of the entire process. And it truly is your experience. Whereas if you're in the hospital, which, don't get me wrong, sometimes a hospital assisted birth is necessary.
I had to be there.
Right.
I wouldn't have changed a thing.
You are the living, breathing proof of that. But
the board knew me.
Mhm.
Well, I had 4 kids in 6 years, so that's what I'm getting at. Like, the staff knew.
I would still be recovering if I had 4 kids.
All very different experiences, which is cool, but it also shows that there's not one right way to have a baby, but it is important for people to understand what's happening in their body, when you are in a hospital, what motivates the timeline that you're on. Is it in your best interest? Is it in the hospital's best interest? And it depends on the hospital. Not all hospitals are bad. Some of them
and the doctor practices too,
and the providers, for sure. Yeah. But I just loved, John, that you were saying you were making it about your wife's power, and it's about your power too, as the support person.
Yeah, that was my original question. Like,
so selfishly, I got to be involved a lot.
Yeah.
So it was great. I wanted to be there.
Yeah. So now, does the doula obviously helps the baby come out and helps birth the baby, right? Now, so how long does the doula stay around? Does the doula stay in the home for a couple weeks with the mother and the baby, or how does that work?
So it depends on, I'm actually not a postpartum doula. That is not where I thrive. I thrive in birth support. I thrive in like the fast-paced, chaotic, high-stakes environment of getting the baby out. So I serve as a birth doula primarily to be there for pain coping techniques, emotional support. I'm also there to support the birthing person's partner. So my primary function is to support through getting the baby out. And then the support postpartum for me looks a little bit different. It's more about rehabilitation of the body, making sure that we're supporting basic function, focusing on getting the diaphragm back to closer to full range of motion, focusing on getting the body, sort of reestablishing the foundation in the body so that within postpartum life, we don't normalize things like incontinence and low back pain and a lot of the things that, like we were saying before, just kind of get shrugged off as, oh, you had a baby, this is your life now. So that's primarily where I tend to focus, but there are postpartum doulas, that are there to be changing diapers and helping with feedings at night and providing support in the home just in those first few transitional weeks. So it really depends on the kind of doula that you hire.
Yeah. And I mean, when I was having babies, so that was considered a luxury, to have someone there like that, like a nurse, basically. Yeah. But I mean, I know women who had their babies in the hospital, but then had the doula at home afterwards. So I think it is just setting someone up for success, yeah.
One of the unexpected joys, because I have to use my name in a sentence at some point, of having a child so early is, she was in the hospital, unfortunately, for, 2 months after she was born. I was there for 10 days after she was born. But before I could take her home, I had to take a class on how to deal with a preemie. And so bathing, somebody told me how to bathe her, to feed her. I couldn't nurse, I could pump, but how to feed her, how to bathe her, managing the monitors that she came home on, all of that kind of stuff. And I thought, whoa, like if everything had gone smoothly, you don't necessarily get a class on how to deal with your newborn, at least back then.
Yeah, they don't come with the syllabus.
Right, exactly. So I actually felt blessed in that way. Because these women at the time, all women, the nurses, they knew Vashti as well as I did, and they knew her body and her needs, and they could help impart that to me. So when I did take her home at 3 pounds 13 ounces and on a breathing monitor, I felt empowered. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I wish we did that for everyone.
I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I mean, the other thing that's changed incredibly, I know some companies are giving maternity leave for fathers, right? They call
As well they should.
Paternity leave.
As well they should.
Yeah. I mean, when I was having babies, it was pretty much just who understood, who got the message that the father needed to be home for a few days at least, certainly not a few weeks or month.
That would have been nice.
Yeah. That's because then you're also juggling the entrance of this newborn into your family life. If you have multiple children and, there's just a lot of things going on.
Juggling lots of sleepless nights and trying to figure out who you
Yeah.
are and how to heal yourself and how to take care of a baby, and you're not sleeping and you're undernourished and you're recovering from, at the very
Major
least,
surgery.
athletic event, and if not also major surgery, which also applies even if you didn't push a baby out of your body, it's still a major athletic event to just go through labor.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
There's a recovery. You've heard from 3 healthcare experts, including their personal and professional testimonies. They discussed birth, what different types of birth support look like, and how to set a birthing woman up for success. Postpartum support looks very different. Healthcare is rehab for the woman's body. Entrance of a newborn into your family life, sometimes having multiple children, includes juggling sleepless nights, trying to figure out how to heal, how to take care of a baby. You're not sleeping normally. Mothers are often undernourished, and you're recovering from a very athletic event. To go through labor, if not also major surgery, is an athletic event. In my next video, we turn to understanding the postpartum mental health challenges many women face after giving birth. Becoming a mommy really changes your life. It's the most transformative experience, and surprisingly, very little is taught to prepare women for what comes after birth. Postpartum mental health in particular is something we the people need to be more mindful about. For so long, this period of the life-giving process has been neglected or overlooked for lack of care. My next episode will discuss the reality of what many new mothers experience and the changes you can make to support them in this passage of life for their overall health of the woman.